Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is of course HD Starcraft, and I hope you guys all had a great weekend. I'm back to be casting some more Starcraft 2 Heart of the Swarm action, and I thought today I would go ahead and switch it up and do a little bit of Protoss versus Protoss. As you guys probably all know, it's the matchup I cast the least, but you know what, it's Heart of the Swarm has been out for a month now, and I still haven't done a PvP to my knowledge. So I did go ahead and go in my email box and select some Protoss versus Protoss games that I thought would be good. And one really stood out to me, and I'm going to go ahead and cast this one out. This is from the Team Story Cup, which is a tournament that's been going on for a couple of weeks now that kind of capitulates the two teams together in a winners all-kill format. So this is a game that was selected from the Team Sports Cup game between mouz.Sports and between Team Axiom. So this is going to be mouz.Mana as the blue Protoss player in the bottom right hand corner, and Axiom's Crank as the red Protoss in the top left hand corner. Axiom's Crank, actually one of the best Protoss players in Korea, used to play for Team Slayers until it was disbanded, and now he is actually the leader for Team Axiom. So this should be pretty interesting. And of course, Mana, don't really need to say too much about him. He's been around forever, and he is one of the top Polish Protoss players in Poland. So this is going to be a Protoss versus Protoss. Should be pretty good stuff. And one of the things about PvP these days that has changed since the old days is now you do have the Mothership Core. You do have the Stargate available to make oracles, and while the oracle I think is best in Protoss versus Terran, simply because you can just go in and just zap all the SCVs down, and really the Terrans have a hard time defending against air at that early stage in the game. I also do feel like the Oracle is very powerful in PvP as well. I think it's probably weakest in PvZ because Zergs obviously start with Queens and they can make Spore Crawlers pretty cheaply, pretty effectively. But I do definitely feel like the Oracle has its place in Protoss versus Protoss. And, you know, nowadays, back then, PvP was completely wild. You know, things could just explode in a moment's notice. It used to be a one base versus one base game all the time. It's still very, very aggressive in Heart of the Swarm. And, you know, this is going to be the first game I've casted in PvP. So hopefully this should be pretty good. I'm told it is going to be a good game, so strap yourselves in, guys, for a good one. By the way, guys, if you guys have any sick HOTS replays, any links to any sick HOTS replays, feel free to send them in to me at HDreplays@gmail.com. And of course, I will take a look at everything. Do remember to include a link and a description. If you forget either one of those, and obviously it's kind of not gonna work. I have a couple of emails where people sent them in to me and it's like, well, it's a great description, man, this sounds awesome, and then I'm about to cast it, it's like, wait, where's the link? I don't have the replay. So make sure you include both. Makes my job a little bit easier. And don't forget to tell your friends I am casting Heart of the Swarm. You guys can subscribe to me on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, blah blah blah, at HD Starcraft. Anyways, we do have the first Stalker coming out here for Team Axiom's leader. That is Crank. He is the team captain. Unfortunately, I don't know where in the Team Story Cup this series, when it was. Is it the beginning of the series, at the end of the series? I'm not entirely sure, but as you guys all know, I'm just casting highlight replays here, not casting entire series for now. Just want to bring you guys the best of the best. And here we are, man. It looks like we do have a proxy pylon coming up at what was once a Xel'Naga Tower on Akelon Waste. They actually removed them here in the retail version of Heart of the Swarm. So there is a little bit of less vision, but Protoss players can, of course, throw down those proxy pylons, as both of them are. Crank, the red Protoss, throwing one up at the top right-hand side, Mana throwing one up in the middle of the map. And here comes the first Mothership Core on the way. There is a little bit of divergence here in Protoss policy. As you guys can see, Crank is actually going to be going for an Oracle. So my predictions here, it looks like they are going to be somewhat correct, as Crank, you know, he's going for Mothership Core, he's going for Oracle. Mana isn't going to be going for the Oracle, though. He's gone for double Gateway, and so that means he's going to go for more heavy Stalkers. So it is actually going to be a bit of a divergence in builds. In fact, Mana actually has 2 Gateways as well. So, you know, Crank has 2 Gateways as well. So it is going to be pretty close here. The only thing is Mana doesn't have a Stargate. He does have a robotics facility. So that is where the divergence of tech will remain. And here comes an Oracle already flying its way over to the right-hand side. I like how Crank isn't going to be using this to fight off the Stalkers. He's using it aggressively, because if he were to use it against Stalkers, they would just die so quickly. It would be a total waste of time. And so he's going to hide it over here. He's got proxy pylons as well. It looks like both forces have engaged. Time Warp Field's getting dropped down as well. Mana snipes out Crank's Mothership Core, and he has, oh no, he's going to lose most of his Stalkers, but he's got reinforcements coming in from the pylon on top, and it looks like Mana is going to win the fight on the ground. And that's what you'd expect, because Crank did go for an extra Stargate. But here we go, man. He's coming in with the Oracle. He's activating Pulsar Beam. He's even brought in a couple of Zealots as well. And look at this, Sentries versus Oracles. Whose Laser Beam is strongest? Pew pew, the Oracle wins. Couple of Stalkers getting warped in. Meanwhile, Zealots are continuing to hack and slash these SCVs down. And I think Crank has taken the lead in this game. Unfortunately, Stalkers, they're just not very good against you know, Zealots and Oracles and whatnot. But if you can get enough Stalkers, you can kite the Zealots around. And it looks like he's been able to snipe off the Oracle as well, which is great for him. And finally, he'll be able to clean up the pests inside of his mineral line. You can see the units lost here very close between the Korean Crank and between the Polish Protoss player Mana. And in fact, on the Harvester's tab, things are looking quite close as well, even though Crank killed off 10 of Mana's probes with this ground and aerial assault, Zealots and Oracles combined. He was not able to actually come out as far ahead as you would have thought. In fact, it's a very close game right now. So you can see that Mana really dropping down that extra time to make more probes. So unfortunately, you know, even though he had more workers for a time, it's all evened out now, and he has gotten rid of that proxy pylon that was behind his natural expansion as well. So there's the early aggression that you guys always expect to see in PvP, but it's evolved to a whole nother level here in Heart of the Swarm. But both players here, you know, they're very well versed in the mechanics behind Protoss versus Protoss. They were able to fend each other's attacks off. I feel like Crank, he might have gotten out a little bit better. I feel like his micro might have been just a tad better than Mana was, but at the end of the day, it's so close right now. It's hard to give either player the edge, and really the divergence in tech here says it all. You know, Crank has a Stargate, Mana has a robotics facility. So what we're gonna see here is Mana having Immortals coming out on the field. Crank might start making Void Rays, or he might even go for Phoenix. Actually, he is gonna go for Phoenix. So he is gonna start to go for Phoenix right now, and Phoenix aren't half bad against Immortals because you can elevate them, basically removing them from play, and then allowing the rest of your army to take out the, you know, the robotics-less Protoss army. So that's very smart from Crank to go ahead and make a couple of Phoenix, and he is going for an expansion as well. And, you know, in PvP, just like in any other matchup, the expansion, the first one to get it down, that slight edge always helps. And we can see that it's a pretty close race right now, actually. Both players are going to be finishing their next eye about the same time. Man, it's so hard to give either player an edge right here. The Harvesters are just too close. Like I said before, the divergence in tech, it's just Stargate versus Robo. And in fact, we have a Twilight Council coming down pretty quickly here as well for Mana. For those of you guys who are confused, once again, Mana, the blue Protoss player, and Crank, the red Protoss player. And Scoreboard, of course, being left up here just to help clear up any of that confusion. But this is very interesting that in Heart of the Storm now, we've got a Protoss player who's sticking with Stargate, and you know that in the late game you can start to add in Tempest, you can start to go for carriers even, and it's not a half bad strategy. I mean, Tempests are really, really good. Back in the old days of Protoss versus Protoss, it was all about who could get more Colossus in the late game, right? Not anymore, because now Tempests are such a great counter against Colossus that you can actually play around with air. So PvP has a lot more diversity now, and it just makes for the game to be so much more interesting. Very, very excited to see how this is going to go down, guys. So look at that Mothership Core using the overcharge there to defend and deflect those Phoenixes, which are still flying around. There is another Oracle coming out from Crank as well. You'd think with the air units he's going for right now, he might, you know, think about going for +1 weapons or something on that Cybernetics core, but he doesn't have it. And that's a little interesting. Sometimes I feel like if, you know, if half of your army is invested into air units, you know, it doesn't hurt to get +1 weapons. I mean, it can only help, right? But I guess Crank not feeling that way. Maybe he's gonna divert his energy, his resources into more ground units here. And in fact, he actually uses the Oracle's detection ability in Vision, trying to scope the area around him to see if there's any observers nearby. Unfortunately, his Oracle is just oh, here comes the Oracle, it's coming down. And remember, the Oracle is a detector for a momentary amount of time, although I'm not sure where it went. It just disappeared. Where did that Oracle go? I'm so confused right now. I have no idea where the Oracle went, guys. think, oh, there it is. Oh man, that Oracle just went the wrong way when that Observer was going down. And I think finally, is he going to see it? No, he's not. The Observer's to the left, the Oracle's to the right. So I don't know how you miss that. When you make your Oracle a detector, how do you miss the Observer that you're trying to look for? And the ability, actually, the Envision ability just failed right there. But he uses the energy once again. And finally, he's able to pick off that Observer. And now he's going to send out his own scouting unit, a hallucinated Phoenix. Very, very interesting divergence of tech. Once again, guys, Crank going with a Sky Toss style with a little bit of ground, and Mana going for more of a conventional ground-based army. The thing here is he's actually going for Archons, which, you know, isn't that strange. Archon Charge Lot was very, very powerful in PvP, but I think it's better in Heart of the Swarm because Tempests aren't going to be as effective, I feel like, against Archons as they are against Colossus. I mean, yeah, I know that both of them are considered massive, but you have to remember that Tempests do extra massive damage to air units, not ground units. So it's a little confusing, but they do a little bit more damage to air units. I believe I have that correct. So yeah, Archons are, I think, a better solution. If you're going to be facing off against a Protoss player who's going for potential Tempests, I think Archons are better than Colossus. I really, really do. And I'm sure Mana realizes that as well. So he's got Archons coming out right now. Meanwhile, look at this. Crank has gone double Robo, and he's going to start pumping out Colossus of his own. So it's like a Sky Toss mixture army, if you will. A couple of Phoenix coming in here. And it looks like they were not really able to get much damage done. Right now, it is actually, Crank looks like he's got a slight lead in supply, just a slight amount, 127 to 117. Don't forget, he has most of the probe kills as well, but it's very unlikely that, you know, this Oracle is going to get much more probe kills at this point. He does use the Revelation ability, which is a little bit different than the Envision. It basically just drops a reveal on an area, on all the units in an area, and it allows you to see through the eyes of that unit, so of that player's unit. So it's a kind of nice ability right there, just to get a little bit of detection, trying to see what Mana's composition is, and he knows now that he's facing off against Charge Out Archon. Now, against Charge Out Archon, I do feel like Crank's probably his best solution to that is just to make you know, a good amount of Colossus. They are very good against Charge Outs, and they're pretty good against Archons. And you know, with the air units he's got on the field right now as well, I think his army's looking pretty damn good. And you can see he's rushing to get more Colossus on the field. This is now a 3-base versus 3-base Protoss game. So this is going to be going, guys, into late game PvP. I'm very, very pleased to say that because it's not something you see every day in Protoss versus Protoss. It used to be very rare, in fact, for PvP to go into the late game, but in Heart of the Swarm, it is very possible, simply because Mothership Core gives you that extra defense that was so needed back in Wings of Liberty. So yeah, both players right now on 3-base versus 3-base on Akelon Waste. We can see more technology being developed on Mana's production tab. He's going extended thermal land, so he is going to be going to add on a couple of Colossus of his own. He's even getting Psionic Storm as well. One thing that you used to see in Wings of Liberty, if a Protoss versus Protoss went into the really late game, was Mothership. Was a Mothership coming out. I'm not even sure what I was trying to get at there, but it was basically the Mothership coming out. And a really cool way to counter the Mothership was High Templars using feedbacks on the Mothership. So I'm wondering here, are we going to see a Mothership come out? You know, the transformation from the Mothership Core, because just having a Mothership for Cloak is so nice in any matchup. So I definitely feel like it would be a great unit to get out on the field if either of these players feel like it is necessary. We might just see it. In fact, Mana right now going for a 4th base. So this is starting to get into the super late game. Looking at the units lost tab, not too much. It's been a pretty passive game so far. Just a little bit of skirmishes here or there. Both players being very diligent, of course, about scouting their opponents. But I actually feel like Crank has really just cut off the air from the Stargate. He's gone entirely ground now. Look at his Colossus count. Wow, jeebers, he's got, what, 7 Colossus right now? And his opponent, let's look at this unit stab right here. He's got 8 Colossus. His opponent has only got 3. So it is really going to be a different battle here. Crank did just lose one of his oracles, but basically it's going to come down to Charge Lot Archon and a few Colossus versus basically mass Colossus and a few air units. So both these players have really gone for different strategies here, but at the end it's going to come down to one big fight. And a couple of Zealots here wailing down these rocks, going to try to bust their way over to this expansion. And it looks like Mana thinking about moving out here. His drums of wars are beating, and his upgrades currently are at 102. His opponent has 003, so both players have at least 3 upgrades, just spread out in different manner. A couple of Zealots trying to fight for control over the Xel'Naga Tower. Looks like Crank will win that. Here comes a big battle. Oh my goodness, Time Warp Field getting dropped down on the left-hand side, catching a few of the units. Another Time Warp Field being used here from Mana, I believe, in order to prevent these units from running down the ramp. But you know what? With the defensive Time Warp being placed here from Crank, it's impossible for Mana to attack this expansion. Although, no, it's not. He's just going to say, screw it. No, he's going to send a few Zealots. But the Mothership uses Photon Overcharge to protect this Nexus. Very smart. Now the Time Warp Fields are starting to go down, so a big laser battle is happening now. Wow, this is insane. Void Ray's using Prismatic Alignment, but there are so many Colossus for Crank. I think he's just gonna outright win this fight, and there's no way Mana can win. That is insane. Crank wins convincingly, and the last air unit, the last unit in fact from Mana's army going down there, that was the Mothership Core. Meanwhile, there is a little bit of a Phoenix fight going on here. I was able to get 1 probe kill, it looks like, and maybe hunting for a couple more as well, but Crank is in firm control of this game. Looking at the resources on the top right hand corner, he is actually, both players are pretty low on resources, which is a little surprising, but that is one thing about Protoss, is you have so many warp gates. You can just drop all your resources very quickly as soon as a battle ends, and go back up to max pretty quickly as a Protoss player. But yeah, I think Crank won that fight very convincingly, and he's going to come in here and try to capitalize now and take out one of the Protoss bases. Meanwhile, he's got a couple of Zealots going down to the expansion as well. It looks like he's trying to spread out of this Colossus over here, and you know, Archons and Colossus just... both players having the ultimate weapons of war here, but Mana doesn't have enough ground troops, and he's forced to fall back once again. It looks like Crank is going to take position outside of his opponent's base, and whoa, what was that just fell down the ramp? It's like a crippled Colossus body. But yeah, I think he's going to take position outside of Mana's base, and he's going to go for one of the Nexi now. And this one is doomed. If Crank loses this expansion, I'm not sure how he's gonna be able to recover in this game. That Nexus is gonna fall so quickly, and finally Crank gets the edge he needs. You know, in Protoss versus Protoss, it's a battle for the supply differential, for who can have the biggest army, who can win the fight, and then you've got to capitalize and be able to take out one of your opponent's Nexi. And finally, Crank is able to do that. And now Mana's starting to fall behind a little bit. I mean, it's going to be tough for him to get back in this game. I guess the Koreans showing why they are the best. You know, Mana is going to have to draw on a lot of his past experience here to try to pick himself up by his bootstraps, try to get right back into this game. Will he be able to do it? Neither player has really switched away from their mass Colossus tech at this point. You know, Colossus is still very good, obviously, in PvP, but I do feel like the Tempest is a great way to counter the Colossus. Just showing you guys right now, you do need a fleet beacon, and you do need a lot of resources to make it. But if you can start to get out a couple of Tempests, man, they are a very good counter against Colossus, for the same reason that they're a good counter against Broodlords. You know, they're great against massive air units. So we'll see if either one of these players decides to throw down a fleet beacon, get a few Tempests out, and maybe even go for a Mothership. But for now, it looks like Crank pretty happy with where he's at. He's got a lot of Colossus, tons of Archons underneath as well. A new Nexus is being warped in from Shakuris to Akalon Waste, and Mana trying to reclaim this expansion, which still has a ton of money. But the problem here is, while he's trying to reclaim an expansion, Crank is claiming a new one. So it's going to be, what, 5 bases against 4 bases here. And obviously Crank just continuing to stack up on that advantage that he's got. He's also got the supply lead at 187 over 150. Just a great game so far by the red Protoss player from Korea, Crank. And let's go ahead and look at these units right now. It looks like Crank's got 7 Colossus, 7 Archons. He's got an Immortal mix in there for good laughs as well, and then he's got 19 charge slots basically as his militiamen. Just the meat guys to go in there and absorb the damage. But it's a very well-rounded army. I'm looking at Mana's army as well. He's actually not too far behind. He's got 1 less Colossus, 2 less Archons, a few more Immortals. So he's actually not too far behind Mana. And let's go ahead and take a look at the upgrades as well. The red Protoss player Crank at 3-1. And it looks like Mana's at 2-3, or 3-2 I should say, with a little bit of more upgrades in armor rather than shields. So it's a pretty close game upgrade-wise, and man, it looks like Total Biscuit is out of the game, so goodbye, man. I guess he bounced out during the live stream event of this game, which he is actually casting. So anyways, we do have these Zealots now starting to come in from Crank. He is going to try to go ahead and attack this Nexus once again and try to take it down, but this time Mana's got a Photon Cannon coming in and a couple of Zealots of his own. Great positioning on these Zealots. It's forcing it into a 3-on-3, buying time for his Photon Cannon to warp in. Very nice play right there, and that should be enough to defend. Meanwhile, Mana also taking out a Proxy Pylon, but oh man, there's the army of Crank. How scary is that? I don't even know how to... That's like 10 Colossus and 8 Archons. This is so scary. I just don't know how Mana, I mean, if he's going to go head-to-head, will he be able to win this fight? Now, the problem is, Crank is maxed, so he's starting to bank resources. Unfortunately, Mana hasn't got that luxury yet. He still needs to max out his army. We'll just have to see how this goes down, but he is on the offensive here. If he can somehow win this fight and take out this Nexus, it's anybody's game to take. But the problem is, look at this army. How do you attack that? Is it even feasible? If you could ask like the best general in the world, how do you attack this? I think every general would say you don't. You go around or you find another way to win, but you do not fight this army head on. That is just straight suicide. And Crank's generals are right now planning for the invasion. They're planning to win this right now, straight up. And meanwhile, we do have a fleet beacon coming out. I was wondering when, you know, Mana was, or one of these players was going to do it. Got to get a few Tempests out to counter these Colossus. It is, I think, the right idea. And it looks like a couple of Zealots. I don't know how they got there. They are going to be totally destroyed by the Colossus army of Mana. And more Templar being warped in from Crank. Oh my god, big fight here. Time Warp Field's getting chopped down as well, slowing Crank's army. But Time Warp's also being chopped down and slowing Mana's army as well. So Mana cannot catch the retreating Protoss units. He might be able to get the straggling Archons, which just were joined in marriage. Man, how can you do that? That is just... Isn't that a sin? How can you do that? But anyways, it looks like a couple of Archons are going to be able to make it back home there. And the first Tempest is on the way. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, a couple of Dark Templar coming out from Crank, trying to sneak behind the Protoss army. And those should be able to do quite a bit of damage, but there is a Photon Cannon back here. And a few more units being warped in. Wow, this is situation critical. If this Nexus falls, or if this Photon Cannon falls, how is Mana going to be able to protect this Nexus? He's got to bring some type of detection here. And I don't think he's got an Observer or an Oracle anywhere nearby, and unfortunately for him, that means this Nexus is going to be abandoned. Beautiful play once again by Crank. Just, you know, making use of the positioning of his opponent's army. He drew Mana's entire force out into the middle of the map, and then he snuck a couple of silent Dark Templar in. And these DTs, I mean, they've continued to rack up the kills, man. 44 probe kills so far in this game by Crank. And let's look at the just the raw harvesters tab. You can see that Mana is down by about 20 probes. So the situation gets more and more dire for our Polish Protoss player in the bottom right-hand corner of Akalon Waste. Will Blue Protoss be able to come back? He's got a lot more Immortals in his army than I would have expected, and Immortals are actually pretty good against Colossus as well. But what he really needs right now, I feel like, are Tempests. He needs more Tempests on the field. He does have another one coming right now from that Stargate. He's got one in the army currently. Showing you guys the attack of the Tempest. The normal attack is Resonance Coil on ground, which is just 30 damage. But against air, it's 80 damage. So it is something serious. It only takes a few shots to kill off a Tempest. Or, excuse me, to kill off a Colossus by a Tempest. So it is very, very strong. And, Here we go. It looks, whoa, Crank is coming in. He's thinking about taking out this Nexus here. And Mana, will he be able to defend? I don't think so. This Nexus just went down like that. I mean, it just went down in the blink of an eye. It was weakened by the DTs, of course, but still, big battle going down here as everything engages. But I feel like Mana's forces are all clumped up, which is not good against the Colossus. But he does have 3 Tempests in the back. He needs to focus the Tempest on the Colossus, and he's doing just that, starting to take them down. And I can't believe this, but Mana might actually win the fight. He will win the fight, and that is why Tempests are so good in PvP against Mass Colossus. Look, I mean, this Tempest has 3 kills, this Tempest has 1 kill. I mean, I know that it's not all Colossus kills, but you have to consider the fact that 80 damage per shot against a Colossus, that is, you know, that's a lot of hurt. And now Mana, if he can get his stuff together, he might still be able to win this game, unbelievably, but his Nexus just went down right there to the last shot. I think it was a Dark Templar that took it down. And I'm looking on the mini-map here, there's just so many pylons, so many little outposts belonging to the Red Protoss. Mana needs to take out those pylon outposts. He needs to prevent the continual assaults from these Zealots and DTs on his new expansions, reclaim the center of the map, and then get more Tempests on the field and start to retake control of this game. I think he's starting to do that just right now. He's starting to take out these pylons, but at the same time, he's got to protect this Nexus. It is starting to take a couple of hits from these Zealots. He just cannot afford to lose another Nexus, I feel like. But if he can take out an opponent's Nexus, then I think that's a worthy trade, and he's going straight for it here. Meanwhile, look at this. Crank has switched his entire army to basically Zealot Stalker, and that is so smart. Why make more Colossus when there are Tempests on the field? Ingenious, really. And there he goes. It looks like the Blue Protoss Mana able to take out a Nexus. This Nexus actually survives simply because it is warping in, and it takes forever to kill a warping building. But more Zealots are being called in to finish that off. Meanwhile, the mass Stalker Zealot army making its presence known in the middle of the map, starting to move out. I do feel like when you're fighting against that many Zealots and Stalkers, it's a great thing that Mana still has so many Colossus alive. Look, he's got 6 Colossus, and with that many Colossus, these Zealots and Stalkers are going to take a beating. The only problem is Mana doesn't have that many ground troops to defend his Colossus, so if a big fight does happen, I do feel like his Colossus could get overwhelmed pretty quickly. Meanwhile, it looks like he did lose this Nexus I was warping in. That is a shame. He's still down to only basically 3 mining bases, as Crank is now, he's on 4, and he's about to get a 5th base as well, so, or reclaim a 5th base if you will. So Crank still holds the economic edge. And, you know, right now, Mana's got to be concerned about that. He needs to, I just feel like he needs to get some Nexi down, and he needs to be able to protect them. Get photon cannons up, seal the deal, don't let these continual assaults take him down. And here comes the big battle. This could actually be the last fight, but it looks like Crank says, no, I don't want to fight that army. Too many Colossus. And, you know, with the Archons and Zealots underneath, just enough cannon fodder to protect the Colossus. But look at this Crank pulling the army out of position, maybe thinking about going for a little hidden sneak attack while that army's to the north. But no, he has to pull away once again because there's an observer over his army. So Crank, his entire army is seen by the Blue Protoss player. And Mana, very smart to leave an observer over this army. He has full awareness as to where this army is moving at all times. And that is just so good for his game. He needs to know where his opponent's army is moving at all times. And it looks like the new Nexus has been brought up. Meanwhile, Mana thinking about taking it down, trying to get his units in the proper position. More Templars being worked out on the production tab. Don't forget, Storm is still an ability that actually we haven't seen too much of, but can be used to great effect, especially against so many Zealots and Stalkers. But Mana here, I mean, I cannot believe that he's been able to pull himself back in this game. This is just incredible. And he might be able to take this Nexus down as well. He's claimed the high ground. Oh my god, this is incredible. And now this Nexus is certainly going to go down. Meanwhile, Crank says, alright, you take down that Nexus, I will distance mine from one of the expansions up here at this position. But distance mining versus short mining, obviously short mining is always more beneficial. And I can't believe this, man. Mana has taken the supply lead. It is 157 supply to 131, but I still don't know if Crank is out of the game because he just has so many Zealots and Stalkers. Imagine, if he can get all these Stalkers to blink in and snipe the Colossus down, he might have a shot. Oh, no, he could be in trouble, though. He's blocked himself into a corner here. He's got to micro these Stalkers perfectly. He cannot allow those Archons to do the splash damage. There are DTs chasing him down as well, and he doesn't have any observers nearby, and of course that is a big problem. If you don't have observers, you can't see Dark Templar, and so he's on the retreat right now, continuing to blink his Stalkers away. Crank now being cornered into a wall, and Crank feeling the pressure. He could lose this game right here. He continues to take damage on his units. He's trying to get his Stalkers out of harm's way. Will he be able to do so? Meanwhile, another Nexus coming up at the 6 o'clock position, and in fact, if Crank continues to walk this army down here, he might be able to snipe off this Nexus, but no, he moves to the left, which is really just just poor luck by him. He could have easily moved down to this corner as well to take out the Nexus, but unfortunately he doesn't know of its actual existence. So he continues to move his Stalker army. He's gotten back home safely, but there are so many Archons, Dark Templar, and Colossus. I don't think that he can actually survive for much longer. Mana has somehow, someway pulled himself back into this game. Just an incredible showing of Protoss versus Protoss ingenuity. And now he's going in for the victory assault. And will Crank be able to batten down the hatches and hold on? I don't think so. There's just too many forces coming in from every single angle. He's continuing to try to use his mobility to his advantage, but Stalkers are just not as strong as Immortals and Colossus. We all know that. And Dark Templars are continuing to slash these Stalkers down as well. And Crank has to call GG. mouz.Mana, ladies and gentlemen, is your victor in this team series and Team Story Cup. An incredible game, really. I mean, that was 43-minute Protoss versus Protoss. And it was interesting because it just showed how PvP has kind of evolved from Wings of Liberty into Heart of the Swarm. A lot of early aggression and different compositions in the late game. And you guys can see late game is very, very much viable now in Heart of the Swarm. So a really cool game there. 43-minute PvP. Hope you guys enjoyed. Once again, if you guys have any sick replays, feel free to send them in to me at HDreplays@gmail.com with the link and a description. For now, I guess that'll be it for me. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I'll see you guys in the next cast, and this is HD Starcraft, and I am signing out.